Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. This is a great honor. The award itself is a great honor, but for me personally to accept an award on behalf of my nation, of the Hungarian nation, it is something very special and incredible. And I have to tell you that this recognition to the Hungarian nation comes at a very important time where we need it, when we need it. And let me explain that yesterday the European Parliament has voted in favor of sanctioning Hungary, which is a member state of the European Union. They gave different explanations to why did they sanction us, but we know the real reasons. The reason is that because of the Christian democratic government of Hungary and of Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, we are not subduing ourselves to the neoliberal agenda. We are not subduing ourselves to the tyranny of political correctness. Okay. Thank you. Instead, we choose to defend our Judeo-Christian values. We choose to defend our national identity, and what hurts the most for the open border liberals of the European Union, we chose to defend our borders and close our gates to illegal migration. We closed our gates to radical Islam, and we defended all of Europe with that. And I have to admit that I have miscalculated. I made a miscalculation when I asked my colleagues back in the ministry to prepare a formal speech for me as I'm going to speak to an honorable group of distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As I was talking to you, I had the privilege to talk to many of you at this event. I realized that I'm surrounded by people who are an honorable group of distinguished friends to the persecuted Christians, but also friends to the government and the people of Hungary. So, thank you. So I decided to keep my folder with my speech on the table. Whoosh, there goes 2 days of work of my colleagues. But instead, I'm going to use this few minutes to talk from the heart, because you deserve that. And let me share with you the cross that I am carrying in my office. Whenever I go to international forum, big human rights organizations, they tell me that even my title is provocative. State Secretary for the Aid of Persecuted Christians. They tell us not to talk about persecuted Christians, let's talk about persecuted ethno-religious minorities. Let's avoid the word Christian. Let's try to keep it in secret that Christians are persecuted all around the world. And all the suffering, persecuted people are important, and we are doing a lot for them within the Hungarian framework, but people fail to recognize the fact that you in this room and in a very few other rooms know that Christianity currently is the most persecuted religion in the world. And this is, not a political big sweeping statement. This is actually based on research. The majority of those people in the world who are suffering persecution because of their religion or belief, the majority of them are Christian. Based on survey, this is hard facts. Yet we don't hear this in the big human rights organizations. Human rights advocacy groups talk about discrimination. And when they talk about discrimination, they deal with issues such as, just giving you an example that, I don't know, is it a restriction of human rights if we restrict if a transgender people cannot choose which restroom he decides to go? You know, this is the idea of discrimination. that in the Western countries people debate and talk about. While more than 200 million Christians have to suffer heavy discrimination. And by heavy discrimination, I mean that perhaps in some countries where the Sharia law is implemented, that if they are in a historical denomination of Christianity, they can practice their faith behind closed walls. But let's say somebody is converting from Islam to Christianity, then the penalty is death, capital punishment. So this is a discrimination we are dealing with, and it affects more than 200 million of Christian brothers and sisters. And this is what we have recognized. This is what the Hungarian government recognized, that this cannot be neglected anymore. So in 2016, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has decided to set up the world's first dedicated unit to aiding persecuted Christians. And what is more important, we have already started a humanitarian aid program with that. That is governed by three principles that other organizations and governments and politicians call innovative. We think this is only common sense principles. It's honesty, directness, and supporting communities to survive in their homelands. So by honesty, I mean that we call it what it is, Christian persecution, but also, unlike some other international aid organizations, we are not trying to be smarter than those people that we want to help. We don't want to decide for them what's good for us. We went to Iraq. Personally, I traveled to Iraq, to Lebanon, even to Nigeria, to places, and I asked a simple question. We asked a simple question: how we may help? And the answer is, help us remain in their homeland, in our homeland. Help us remain where our ancestors live, in the case of the Middle East Christians, where they have lived for 2 millennia, since that's the cradle of Christianity. So this is what we do, and as it was mentioned, another so-called innovative approach of ours is that we deliver the aid directly to these communities. So instead of using big, convoluted international agencies where half of the money gets lost, or the local governments, to put it simple and practical, the transfer donation goes from the Hungarian state treasury to the Iraqi Catholic Church, to the Orthodox in Syria, to the Lutherans in Nigeria, and so on. And what we support is the survival of these communities. And for that, we need to save their lives. We need to save the places where they live, and we need to save their livelihoods. So in that order, our first programs in 2016 were humanitarian fast relief for the Christian refugees staying in the Middle East, in order that they can hold on and live a life with acceptable conditions until the reconstruction process is done in the war-torn area. And so on, the second type of projects that we are doing are major reconstruction projects in 7 countries involving the reconstruction of hospitals, schools, family homes, and also churches. And finally, the third type is an investment in the future of these communities. We have invited hundreds of young Christians from persecuted, discriminated, and threatened communities to come to Hungarian state universities. We have awarded scholarships to them, so once they receive Western-level education, they can return to their home communities and take part in the rebuilding process. And finally, if I may close with one example, there is one flagship project that we have that I would like to showcase to you, and that's the complete reconstruction of a town called Tel Skuf on the Nineveh Plains. Tel Skuf is a small town or large village north of Mosul, and it was occupied by ISIS or Daesh in 2014, and all the 1,300 families living there had to flee, mostly to Iraqi Kurdistan. And after the town changed ownership, there were more than 900 buildings destructed or highly damaged in this town, and it took only a $2.2 million donation from the Hungary Helps program, that is the name of our program that we are running, to completely reconstruct this town. And at the end, 1,000 out of the 1,300 families have returned to this town. Now, I don't like to talk about success because we are facing a humanitarian disaster here of epic proportions, but certainly the example of Telskuf gives us hope that if we are giving aid and donation and we are expressing our charity in a smart way, then actually these communities can be saved. They can be saved. And you know something that is very touching is that we have invited the priest of Telskuf to Budapest. And he told us that the people there gave a new name, an addition to the name of the town. Now it's called Telskuf Bint el Magyar, which means Telskuf, daughter of Hungary. This is wonderful. And wherever I'm invited to speak, I tell this story, not to get recognition, even though at this point, because of the political reasons and bad PR I told you before, we can use some recognition. I'm telling this because I want other countries and governments to follow this example. I know there are great organizations, NGOs, charities like the Knights of Columbus who are doing similar projects, but we are taking this example to all the governments and international organizations to follow, because what we want is to have a town next to the daughter of Hungary that is called the son of the United States. Or the sister of Germany, or even the brother of the United Nations. And I'm very happy, and we were very pleased to learn about Vice President Mike Pence's announcement last year that the US would start a program for the Iraqi Christians. And we were very happy to share our experience with the USAID and with the US State Department. We appreciate very much the work and the leadership the US does, calling the ministry, organizing the ministerial for the advancement of international religious freedom. And I can finish with an announcement. Today I have had very fruitful talks at the USAID, and after exchanging mutual recognition, today we have decided to start joint actual projects on the ground in Iraq. And after that, who knows, we will extend to all the other countries. There are more than 80 countries where Christians are persecuted, and we will be both doers and governments and people who are taking action. So with that, I would like to once again thank the organizers for this award. Thanks for your support to Hungary, for Hungary, and also for the persecuted Christians. Thank you very much.